we will win based on the fact that we're focused on the customer and that end use, whatever it is, our installation practices and having a good set of people here that are educated and willing to learn new things. All of those things build that up.
Whether you're going to market through dealers, distributors, or some other partner channel, the mediated sale is complex. We call it B2B to X.
But the leaders in the industry are the ones who are making it look simple. I'm John Goff.
And I'm Kyler Mason, and this is Why You Win, presented by Element 3.
Adam Keane is the president and owner of Allied Body and a founding partner of Fourward Upfitting. Adam's a fourth generation owner of Allied Body, but he took a circuitous route to get there, which is really interesting, and he told us about here in this podcast. But the part of this interview that I liked the most was Adam's entrepreneurial approach to understanding customer needs and letting the business grow in interesting ways and taking advantage of opportunities as they present themselves. I hope you enjoy it. Adam, we're so glad to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you guys. Appreciate being here.
So you've got a couple of different roles in a couple different organizations. Usually we ask what the organization wants from you, but you've got to have to answer that question maybe twice at least right now. What do your multiple organizations, what do they look to you for?
Oh man, what do they look to me for? It's interesting because being at Allied for so long, touched a lot of different pieces of the business here at Allied. And I find myself, now that I'm an owner, doing completely different things. I didn't expect that a couple of years ago when I took over the reins as full owner. I figured everything would just continue to roll as it was. And it's a very different thing now. I find that they look for direction really more than anything. I tease the guys around here a little bit, but I used to be the confidant, right? As the second in command, everybody would come to me with either their gripes or their cheers and talk to me about everything going on in their lives. And the second I took ownership, my second in command became me and the confidant, and I became the guy that they just look to for direction, really. So there's all the background stuff that's going on. And I hope that really what they see and what they come to me for is that culture, really. That's really important to me and us. And so I think everything that I'm doing is focused around that. And I think that's what they continue to ask of me. Whether we're correcting something, we're building towards something.
Did you grieve that transition at all? Like, talk about your feelings.
I didn't at the start, right? I didn't really realize it. And I was so excited to be making the buck stops here, making that final decision. But there's just certain things, and knowing that it's mine to screw up or correct. It was a really good, powerful feeling. And then, yeah, as time goes on, I still consider almost everybody that I work with a friend at some point, right? But at the same time, I'm definitely grieving a little bit that they don't want to come in here and BS with me over what's going on in their lives and whatnot. And so I really cherish it. I probably spend too much time now when they come in. It's like an unload session for me as well to figure out how people are doing and what they're doing and share some of my own personal stories with them to maybe help motivate them or have them sit beside me as I'm complaining about something, I guess. So yeah, definitely a little hard.
Hang on to it a little too long. Yeah. What about Ford? I mean, you're experiencing this as the owner and Allied, the same thing true on the other side.
Fourward Upfitting is so interesting because the way it began, the four companies are so like-minded and similar that are partner companies. And so when we get together, it is extremely strategic. Just the conversations have always been, even when we've known each other for a long time through NTEA and our run on the NTEA board of directors. And so when we did that, we got to know each other and we would share and help each other out with different things going on. So we've always had those high-level strategic conversations. And so that's really what it's about with us still. It's almost like a friend hangout when we're going through things, because we could go from how are we going to do things and what are the processes we need to create to just a completely random topic about whiskey or a trip we took or something completely random, like one thing to the next, and then just keep flipping back and forth. So, but I would say of all the things with that group, I think we all feel in some ways that we're the anchor of the group, right? Everybody else is is smarter and better at what they do. But I think if you asked any one of us, we would give praise to all the other guys. And I think what happens with that when you're in a group like that is it's really refreshing. You come out of it just energized with a focus or an energy to do things better for yourself. And then also feeling like, hey, I'm around these really smart guys and I contributed something. That's pretty cool.
Why does Fourward exist? What was the impetus for bringing you all together?
So I think the big key thing for us was looking at national fleets and the time to get the vehicles on the road, making them money. And we just saw sort of an issue with the current process. And we felt like there's been a lot of consolidation and vertical integration in our industry. And some of that's been good and some of it's been bad. And we just felt like we had a story to tell to gain customers that each one of our companies may not have individually without figuring out a way to do things better as a group. And so with that, we decided that this idea that doing business locally for national fleets can be a viable thing. And so that's really the start of it. And it's something that we've always talked about. How do we do something together? Like, we enjoy hanging out. You know, we don't really have a purpose other than fun anymore, but we know that we got to do something together. And that was really the start of it. But it's to minimize the amount of time that it takes to get a vehicle completed and a full solution ready for a national fleet customer that is not taking advantage of. So we're the opposite of a ship through program or a OEM freight program. It's getting things done locally and being able to service them around the country with people that you trust, with builds that are consistent, and sharing of processes across the group to be able to get that done correctly.
So the organizations that came together to form Fourward, same business across different geolocations, or are you each contributing something different to the process?
That's one of the really neat things about the group. The businesses are very similar as far as just how we go about business and ownership structure, but yet we all do a lot of the same things, but then we each have a couple of unique pieces that we do. So, for example, Phoenix down in California, they are an upfitter, but also a manufacturer. So there's a lot of products that they manufacture directly there in Southern California. Casper's Trucking is in Wisconsin. They really specialize in Class 8 heavy-duty equipment. Messer Truck Equipment is in Maine and in Ohio. In Ohio, they specialize in van and light truck equipment. And in Maine, they're kind of a full scope like we are here at Allied, only they have a specialty where they recertify petroleum tanker trucks. Here in Allied, we are what we call ourselves, a full line truck equipment distributor, but we have different segments of the business. We've really diversified. So we have our light truck and van shop. We have our traditional truck shop where we do service bodies, flatbeds, dump trucks. In the van shop, we're doing a lot of Adrian Steel interiors. But we also have a division where we build mobile dog grooming vehicles for one large national franchise. And they happen to be extremely advanced technologically with battery-powered salons and the ability for us to log in and diagnose vehicles around the country, all run from a single screen inside of the van. So every function of that, which is tied into additional things that we're doing here in that shop. We call it our e-power shop because we're able to do different mobile workstations. And then our fourth division is it's a product called Walker Blocker. That's a truck side underride guard for pedestrian and bicycle safety. So we put them on large trucks to prevent pedestrians and bicyclists from getting run over by the rear tires. So we sell those nationally. A lot of garbage trucks around the country are being mandated to have these on them. And so
How does that work?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It is something where if you look at vehicles in Europe or Asia, they've had them for a long time, though they're more crude, I would say. And the reason for that is that in the rest of the world, most of the vehicles are type certified, meaning that the manufacturers of the equipment that goes on them works with the OEM and certifies that, all right, here's our build. This is what we're doing. So they're putting side guards on as they're putting this into their package. So it's all a part of it. Here in the US with pass-through certification, so that's the incomplete vehicle documents that we get that show that we've completed the vehicle. With pass-through certification, what happens is we are able to say that the OEM gave us these guidelines to build the truck. And as long as we follow them, the vehicle will be certified. And so that means in the US, we can really custom tailor things to the individual's needs so that they're able to build it out so that they can do their job most efficiently. We have the kind of that benefit where they don't in the rest of the world. And so with side guards, we had to come up with something that would work around all those different variations. So it's not something that you can just customize every single time when you're building the body. And then on top of that, we've had years and years without regulation. So as we build into the potential of this being something that is required, we had to be able to put something onto a vehicle that could retrofit onto existing vehicles. Because if you're only putting it on new vehicles, what's the point? There's so many old trucks out there. Our system is designed with enough adjustability so that we can work around hydraulics or toolboxes or tanks. And so there's been a lot of studies that US DOT has done on recommendations of how far off the ground, how far from a tire, all those different things. And so we put this basic panel on the side of the vehicle that's been tested to withstand a certain amount of weight. And basically what happens is if a garbage truck turns and there's a pedestrian there, this is my silly way of explaining it, but you think about the old Wild West cow catchers on the front of a train, right? It's just designed to push them out of the way.
If you had gone anywhere other than cattle guard with that, I would not have understood the metaphor. I was like, it's got to be cattle guard.
It's the easiest way to explain it. And simple things are awesome, right? And so it just pushes you out of the way, because the number one cause of death by being hit by a large truck is not actually being hit by the truck. It's being run over by the rear tires. And so many bodies that we create have got that large gap, right? Like you look at a delivery truck and there's a huge gap between the bottom of the body and the ground and the space from the side of the vehicle to the frame. So this is designed to just take up that space and push it out of the way without adding a ton of weight and complexity to the vehicle.
So there's got to be a story behind you guys deciding to invent and patent a cow catcher for garbage trucks. I got to hear it.
It's kind of happenstance. University of Washington had a new fleet manager, and we did a ton of work with them, and he wanted to make a name for himself. And so New York City and the city of Boston had already started looking into what that would do because of the number of fatalities that they had from certain size vehicles and pedestrians and bicyclists. US DOT was coming to give some kind of a presentation, and we're going to be using some of University of Washington's vehicles for this presentation. And so he said, I really want to do this. Can you put these side guard things on some trucks? And I'm like, well, I don't know what side guards are. And so I started looking into it, and he's like, I just weld some bars on there and we'll be good to go. And I'm like, that's not how I do things. So I kind of researched and used some of my contacts within the industry to find out, all right, who's making these? And the answer was nobody. It really was limited. And that's when I started to do all the research in Europe and Asia as far as how they were being put on and what they were doing. So when that happened, I'm like, I think I have an idea. So we had another business venture, I guess you would say, where we were working with a company out of New Zealand doing glass rack, so glass handling equipment on the side of vehicles. And they were utilizing a whole bunch of extrusions. And it was really my first, I've known about extrusions and we use them in a lot of different products.
Say more about what that is for people who might not also be manufacturing.
Yeah. So great way to explain. I'm going to try to cattle guard this, right?
Do it.
A great way to explain extrusion is the things that you get from a IKEA or a furniture manufacturer where you're sliding something into a rail and tightening it. It's basically something that's preformed, but in metal that you can attach something to, or you can form it in a way that's not just standard. So like steel, when they're forming an angle, right, they're able to pour this hot molten steel in and form it. Well, with an extrusion, they've actually got to pull it through a die as it's hot to be able to create that. So I'm trying to think of something household.
It's the mop top hair shop, right? You have the material in and you push it and it comes out in a certain shape.
Like the old Play-Doh machine, right? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, aluminum, that's really the only way that you can get some of those profiles and things. And so that's really where our experience came, was in these aluminum extrusions. One of the differences too between us and some of the others is there are other companies in the world that sell parts for this, but they don't necessarily give you a solution that's been tested. They're giving you parts and you're putting it together to meet your dimensions. Whereas we're basically saying, you gave us your dimensions, we're going to give you something that works within the parameters that we know will work. And so it's a completed kit when we send that out.
And you're manufacturing it there in Seattle.
We are. Yep.
And that's awesome. And you sort of downplayed it for a second. So let me play it back up for you and say, well, it's not that big of a deal. It's just an extrusion. Well, it's actually like you guys had this like really distinct single customer need, and you went and made a thing. And then you saw, oh, like that's not just a customer need. That's a market need. We're going to patent it and make it big. You've actually done that at least 3 times in this conversation already, Adam, where you're like, oh, we just do this one little thing. And we actually like entrepreneurially and like joined forces with 3 other organizations. And then we invented a product. We do this, that, and the other. Like, dude's an entrepreneur.
Like I said, I mean, I downplay it. I try to surround myself with some pretty smart people and different things. So when we talk about ourselves, I always look at what we could be, right? What we're going towards and what we could be. So, I still look at us as the small company that my great-grandfather started back in 1949 here in Seattle. And we're just doing the things we know and trying to build into things that interest us, which keeps the passion alive.
So what, is it 4th generation?
It is. Fourth generation, but through kind of a strange path.
Okay. Tell us about the path, and then I'll ask the question.
I'll make the path quick. It is, my great-grandfather started the company, and he sold it to his son-in-law. My grandfather was his son-in-law. He sold it to his son, who is my uncle, the youngest of the siblings. And then my uncle sold it to me. So 4th generation, but 3 different last names because of the pathway that it took. And then really kind of an interesting story. It was my great-grandfather grew up in the Dakotas, and they had a huge dairy farm, and it burned down. And then he moved out here not long before he started Allied to basically just better opportunity for work. Went to work at a company that's still in existence here in Seattle doing van body repair work on vehicles, and then decided that he felt like he could do a good job running his own business doing the similar work. But he knew milk and dairy really well. So the first things that Allied actually built were milk trucks, and then we got into armored cars with Loomis. And so they had this great relationship. Yeah.
Dairy to armored car stuff.
And so we literally had in the shop milk trucks, armored cars, a delivery truck, van bodies. And that was the bulk of the work that we did back in the early days. And then it just kind of evolved from there. I like to say that we were forward thinking even back then, because a lot of the work we were doing on the armored cars was aluminum. And so we were trying to make them as light as possible while still creating that armor. So there's been a lot of forward thinking and ingenuity throughout the years, just because there wasn't a roadmap. So we were just kind of creating what we felt would be right, or how we could make things work for the customer. And that's kind of the mentality we always take.
Interesting. So what mark do you want to leave? Is it growth? Is it impact? Is it like, what's on your radar?
That's a complex question. There's a few different pieces to that. I want to start with the first one. Whenever anybody asks me, being an owner is not easy. There's a lot of perks. Don't get me wrong. It's good to be owner, and it's also really difficult. But really the thing that keeps me going above everything else is the fact that I feel like even in our small company that I'm able to provide a career for people, for our employees and their families. And so that's really, really important to me. Like the growth is for, I'd be lying if I said I didn't want good things for myself and my family. Absolutely. But I also want the people around me to have a similar experience. And so that's number one. Number two is, I think Allied Body Works, we've been doing cool stuff for over 75 years now. And yet we've always been somewhat regional. And so there's a growth aspect for me that wants to grow that family legacy to being more of a name throughout the country for the special things that we do. I think it's also, we're in such a busy environment and industry, and a lot of it has to do with what a customer wants, right? What a customer needs to be able to go to work every day and to provide the things that we need to live. But sometimes innovation doesn't come in our industry as rapidly as in others at times, because it's so important to keep things going. And so, like with the mobile dog grooming, is mobile dog grooming the most important thing out there? No, but to a lot of people it's important. And we're able to provide a new way to do that. And that's both more environmentally friendly, that's more consistent and safe, and all these different things. And so those kind of key things are what keeps me going. I want to keep finding ways that even our company can push forward and create these changes within our industry and in our world that are good. One of the things that I think stuck with me a ton, it just happened to be during the year that I was becoming president of NTEA. NTEA has a president's breakfast. I think they call it something now. The dirt is, I still believe that all of the people that run through the chair should be called president. They now call them chairperson. And so we still call it president's breakfast because that's what we know it as. They have a keynote speaker, and it's always somebody really impressive. But the year that I was going in, there's sort of that entertainment before the morning starts. And the MC for the breakfast was a poet that NTEA had hired. And he came out on stage with a guitar, and he told this amazing story about a guitar builder and his apprentice, and how the apprentice was going through learning how to build guitars, essentially. And he wrapped it all up in a bundle, and at the end compared the guitar maker and apprentice to our industry and what we do building trucks. So from the OEM down to the upfitter or equipment manufacturers, the final test was that the guitar builder asked the apprentice, "What do we make?" And the apprentice said, "Well, of course we make guitars." And he went into a long explanation of how the guitar builders were the builder of music and dreams and putting things into music from life, and that in our industry, things don't function without the vehicles that we provide, and that by our heating and our air conditioning and our, you name it, just about everything requires some type of a work vehicle to get it to us as a consumer, or us as just a human. And so that really stuck with me, and I use that a lot because that's the way I feel. I feel like what we do is so important to our way of life and what we can achieve and what we can grow to. So that's what kind of keeps me going and drives me, and also gives me a little bit of comfort knowing that people will always need that sort of thing. So hopefully there will always be a company like Allied Body Works there to be able to provide it.
Love it. Brings you purpose for sure. I want to go back to, because I was thinking this as you were talking about it, Fourward and Allied. How do you distinguish between an Allied customer and a Fourward customer? Who are you serving, and how is that different?
Yeah, that might get into the secret sauce a little bit. We'll
stay away from it. Just give us an ingredient.
Yeah, what I can tell you is that's something that we look at a lot. How do we determine what that is? And I think at our core with Fourward Upfitting, we don't care, which is kind of unique, right? But we don't care whose customer that is. What we care about is how we can best serve them. So it depends on, like I mentioned before, the different companies have got different specialties that they do. Depending on the scope of the customer themselves, freight is an issue, right? Between our 6 locations, we cover 53% of the country within I think it's a 6-hour drive. And so with that, if we have a customer that needs things in multiple states or multiple areas, a lot of times it'll make sense to bring them into the fold. But it really just depends on where the customer originates from and who they are and what we think we can accomplish.
Mm-hmm. So who are you competing with then as Fourward?
Everybody. No. So, I mean, that's the weird thing about our industry. I know it's hard to talk about a visual in a podcast, but are you guys familiar with NTEA's spaghetti chart at all?
I don't think I've seen the spaghetti chart.
Okay.
I've drawn a spaghetti chart.
Yeah.
I love NTEA's spaghetti chart, and it talks about the path to the customer. And
Yeah, I have seen this actually.
so it basically, there are so many different starting points for the customer. They could go through a dealership, they could go through a leasing company, they could go through an upfitter, they could go through a vehicle manufacturer or a body manufacturer. It doesn't necessarily, it never takes the same path, right? You might touch multiple, or you may have one point of contact, but that point of contact is also in contact with others. But really, the point of it is that it goes all over the place. And what that means is that we both are working with and working against every single one of those. So when you say competition, I think that's I'm not going to give you a direct answer, because we're both, partner's not the right word, but we're both, working with and working against every single one of those groups and different people. And so we could be competing with a different company on every level. We are doing things unique and different. And so there are people that we could consider competitors that look very different than us, or we could consider people that are kind of similar but do things slightly different.
Adam, I want to try something out on you, and you can tell me if this reflects your world or not. So our work is all about B2B to X. We're talking about channel sales and organizations that go to market with other businesses, partners or otherwise, often dealers, distributors. And we do a lot of work with things with wheels and engines, but also other businesses that don't make vehicles. And so an upfitter is a thing that is like not entirely intuitive to somebody who is not working in the commercial vehicle space. Like, I get the manufacturer, I get the dealer. What is this other thing? And as you've been describing your world and your organizations that you work with and your experience, what I'm actually hearing is a parallel to like a VAR, a value added reseller, which is like in IT services, they would be a person that would do like the hardware and the software integration on site, for example. Like a bank needs server in-house, and they also need somebody to like help run that, and their internal IT team can't put it together. So they hire a VAR to come and like do the consulting and the build on that. So I haven't used that metaphor before, but I'm trying it out here on you. Does that resonate?
Yeah, it does. And I love that we're going here, because I think upfitting is extremely interesting. Upfit isn't even a real word, right? Like it's going to come up with a red squiggly line every time you write it, and we write it all the time. At some point, I'm going to figure out how to train my computer to actually view that as a real word. But
give it a right click.
Yeah, you need an IT guy for that.
Value added reseller.
Yeah. But I think, yes, we are, and we're also different. We don't fit within a single category, because we're also manufacturing things, and we're also, yes, we're reselling, we're also installing, and we're manufacturing. So there's like this crossover. The thing is, every one of those people in the spaghetti chart thinks that they're most important, right? But a chassis, while you would say, yeah, it might be the most important piece, it can't go to work. You got nothing on the back. You got nothing you can do with that truck. Same thing goes with a leasing company. They're going to put maybe the financials together and the service together, but we're really the ones that make the vehicle into that specific tool that a customer can utilize to generate revenue, create jobs, service its customers. So of course we feel like we're the most important, and everybody else would argue that they are, and I don't blame them for that at all. But that's what the upfitter is. We're figuring out what the tool is and actually producing it so that there's a work-ready vehicle at the end of the day going to the customer, final solution. And that's where we get into the final stage and altered stage vehicle certification. There's not enough credit given to that, really, but that's a really important piece of the build cycle for upfitters in the U.S.
It goes back to that example you were sharing with us earlier about the mobile dog grooming, right? Like, you can't go to work. You can't go wash a dog on a truck chassis. And your proximity to the customers problem, their pains, their gains, their needs, the work that they have to go do. And your deep understanding of that lets you build not only the battery tool, like that, I'm going to install the outlets in this truck chassis that need to exist, or the truck body that need to exist, but you're doing software and you're doing hardware and you're doing a bunch of other stuff that goes above and beyond and categorically changes their work.
Yeah. That sounds really impressive. I like that.
Thanks. Yeah, you're awesome. You're the greatest.
That's awesome. You mentioned that we were talking about like growth and impact you want to have. Mark, you want to leave. You said, we're regional. You want to push beyond that. Are there strategic bets, decisions, ideas that you have that you think will help to kind of like push that mission that you have?
Yeah, absolutely. And like John said, I don't necessarily give myself credit a lot, right? Walker Blocker, we're already national, to an extent. And with our mobile pet grooming vehicles, those are national. So we're getting there. But yeah, as far as sort of the growth tools to help us get there, or the ideals, I guess, ideals, some word, I think what we're trying to do is take that approach of, we figured out some very specific wins for customers. How do we show that in a different arena? And like I said before, like with the e-power system stuff, there's a mobile pet grooming vehicle that we built, but we've also built vehicles that somebody can work inside of all day without the engine running and staying comfortable and reading water relays or meters and replacing them, or mobile ultrasound unit, or getting into some of this. I can't talk about it too much, but there's augmented reality test pilot and doing some things where they would be able to charge lithium batteries and do different things out in the field that they wouldn't have been able to do otherwise, or in the same way. Those are the types of things that we want to take our expertise and really share outside. So what's great is a lot of the larger companies that do similar, a lot of larger upfitters focus on what makes them money the most. And it is a rinse and repeat cycle. That's where you see a lot of similar vehicles on a dealer lot. I can tell you, as a true upfitter, what we believe, we get a lot of those vehicles back to us that need this and this in order to make them work ready. And so, we're really focused on that end customer solution in full. And so that's really the target, is how do we share that and continue to make that accessible to everybody? And so getting that and we may not do it the best, right? There's other guys like us around the country that do a phenomenal job with that exact thing. But how do we as Allied and we as Fourward Upfitting make that process and that end product available everywhere? And that's really the goal for us. And a lot of education, a lot of training. I love having dealership training stuff where we're training commercial dealers about understanding a customer's needs, not just selling them a vehicle. Guy comes in and wants a dump truck. Well, there's a million different things that they could need or want, or could help make their job easier. And so it's for them to sort of understand what those key pain points are, or what the key successes are, so that we can build that truck the way that the customer is going to be able to utilize it from the get-go. So reduce downtime, all those things. So yeah, I answered that in a roundabout way, but really what we're trying to do is make local service available to a broader scope of people.
I think that's really interesting. And I'm thinking about an organization that we've done some work with. That's a fleet rental organization, and they're also an upfitter. So I'd say like rental is sort of the headline, and upfit is very much the secondary, or maybe even tertiary sort of part of their business. But they, in their work, have invented new kinds of like truck bodies to service a particular kind of organization, and therefore they can reach out into different parts of construction sites that were previously inaccessible. And I think that like the news will say that makes innovation feel like it's got to be a drone. That's going to be the cool new thing, or it's got to be autonomous, or that's going to be the cool new thing. But the way that you're describing your work is also about innovation. It's about customer service, and it's about this, what can be new and different, and how can we reach into these new places with different technology on a truck with wheels. There's actually probably 90% of the things that will be invented in the next 5 years are going to be on top of platforms that are already existing today. We don't have to reinvent the entire world to make the world better in the ways that you're describing. And I think going to those customer needs and pains and just improving them incrementally 5-10% at a time can get you to a very interesting place in not too long.
Yeah. As you were saying that, it was kind of reminding me of something that I've had to say over and over again to different customers or relationships that we had. And one of the questions we would always get from an end customer is, well, what's the best vehicle for me to buy? And as an upfitter, right, we may have our favorites at time for any particular reason, but like you were sort of alluding to, it doesn't matter. We need a vehicle with wheels, and we need it to make sure that it takes the customer to the job site, gets them home safely at the end of the day, and that we can build the tools around that vehicle that make the customer's job easier, more efficient, and get it done at the end of the day. So that's a question I never answer, is I don't have a favorite vehicle, and in our fleet of vehicles, we use a lot of different OEM because of that same fact, just to prove that point that, each one of them may have something better or worse, but at the end of the day, it's what we're using that for. If it gets us to, that's what's the most important.
I would follow up and say, what do you drive?
Oh boy, you're really trying to get me in trouble and all that. I will tell you that we have a Ford, a Chevy, and a Suzuki. Yeah, what else?
You can pass the red face test with your answer, man.
We try to spread it around.
Not bad.
Yeah, but what does your wife drive?
Not going there.
Yeah,
we have a 1967 Volkswagen Bug in the driveway, so
really?
that won't
that's
get in
awesome.
trouble. I can't get in trouble for that one.
My 15-year-old son was browsing the new Volkswagen buses the other day. I mean, he was telling me about how cool those are. I was like, yeah, they look cool, man.
My whole decision for the Bug was that when my kids became driving age, and with my daughter, she actually graduates from high school tomorrow, I thought, I'm going to buy them an old classic vehicle so that we can learn how to work on it together. And she's going to know everything about it. And it's going to be stick shift so that she can't be on the phone while she's driving. And bought her this 67 Bug. It's beautiful. It's fun and great. And she still hasn't learned how to drive it. And so we ended up punting and buying her a nice, safe automatic to drive. And so Dad's the only one that drives around in the Bug now. So
That was strategic. You just got you something that you wanted.
Yeah, it was not a bad choice.
Yeah.
All right, Adam, we know that you're big on culture. We know you care about your people. And so I'm going to ask you a question with the asterisk that you may not answer with the word or phrase culture.
Okay.
Why will you win?
Why will we win? This is easy to not use that word because I think we will win based on the fact that we're focused on the customer and that end use. We're not focused on all of the ingredients, right, in the final meal or at the chef's table, whatever it is, our installation practices and having a good set of people here that are educated and willing to learn new things. All of those things build that up, but really that focus on across the entire company on how is the customer going to use this and how do we make sure that it's the best thing possible? That's why we're going to win. I think that's, there were ways to make more money and push more out when vehicles chassis were shorted and we had access to different things and we could just do things. But we remain steadfast with the idea that we've got to be that solution for the customer that they're able to go to work with this thing. And so I think simple answer, that's how we're going to win, is we're going to stay focused on that and continue to build our reputation. Will that mean that we grow at some rapid rate? Maybe, maybe not. But I think that we will continue to grow based on the fact that that's our clear-eyed focus.
4 generations later, you can keep being patient.
There you go.
Yeah.
He said it,
That's
not
right,
me.
John.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Great.
Adam, it's been great having you on. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys asking me. It's been fun to chat.
Yeah. Thanks, dude.
Why You Win is presented by Element 3, a marketing firm focused on modernizing go-to-market strategies for manufacturers that sell through complex distribution channels. We help leaders solve problems across demand generation, sales channel support, and brand development.
If you'd like more from myself or John, connect with us on LinkedIn. And for more from Element 3, visit element3.com. That's elementthree.com.